Hi, and thank you for joining me today for our talk about managing investment distributions in retirement. I'm Dee Dee Jones with Innovative Financial, and we're live at noon, a little late today. Thanks for your patience. So, what we want to talk about today is an interesting situation. Several generations ago, this wouldn't have even been a topic. Our grandparents and people who came before weren't faced with the decision of how to manage money coming from investments and retirement accounts that we've saved up over a lifetime. They would have been relying on Social Security, a pension, and family. So things changed in the 70s. The IRA was made into law. Back then, you could put just $2,000 a year in, so it's up from there. And the 401k was invented around the same time, encouraging people to save money in a tax deferred way to be used in their retirement. That has led to today's questions. How do we manage the money that's coming from those accounts in a way that keeps us from running out of money and serves our other interests? So there's four main types or strategies or buckets, if you will, of ways to do this. And the one most people have heard of, which is why we titled this 4% or something else, is the 4% withdrawal rule. William Bengen, great guy, heard him speak many times, did the research on this, and he looked at rolling 25-year periods and the investment returns in each period and said, at what percentage of the portfolio can we take out money, adjust it for inflation each year, and avoid running out of money? And that's where that 4% came from. Now, there's a lot of caveats around that 4% rule in terms of the kind of investments you need to have, the inflationary environments. In fact, he's recently quoted as having abandoned his rule entirely. That's not what he said, but what he said he's doing, he's basically abandoned it. So not one we all want to completely hang our hats on, but it's actually a good place to start. If you think about a bucket of money, you know that you don't want to take out too much because you might run out of money, and you don't want to take out too little because that's, underperforming for you. You're not taking out enough money. Maybe you're not having as much fun as you should. So the 4% rule really has a lot of validity for a lot of folks as a starting point. Now, the way the rule was researched and can be implemented is described by a friend of mine who's a financial advisor as hell or high water. You're going to take out 4% that first year, and each year thereafter, you're going to take out that amount plus inflation. Now, you might need that much money, you might not. So that's a bit of a drawback. It's very, very prescriptive on how to take the money out. And most people don't live that way. Once people are in retirement, their cash flow needs, they ebb and flow. Some years they need more, and shoot, during COVID, lots and lots of people lived on quite a bit less because we weren't doing anything. So that's the first one. So it's one way to refer to that is like constant dollars adjusted for inflation, hell or high water for that. So another way to think about withdrawals, or another strategy one could implement, is a constant percent of the portfolio. And it's similar to the 4% rule, only it's not adjusted for inflation. And what that means is you can never run out of money. You're going to say, look, I'm going to take out 6% of the portfolio every year, no matter what. Years the portfolio grows because the market is doing well, your withdrawals will increase. Years where it does poorly, your withdrawals decrease. Now, the problem with that is humans, being the kind of creatures that they are, they don't like that kind of uncertainty. That's where the 4% rule has some advantages. But using a rule like this, you can have a very predictable future. Now, the trick here is to try and find the right percentage where once you adjust it for returns, inflation, and any other fees that might be involved, that the money lasts as long as you do. So it's tricky because, again, it's all coming down to, do you have the crystal ball? We don't. That's, the 4% rule has some advantages there, but this one's not bad. You just might find that some years you have more or less money than perhaps you needed. Another way to withdraw your money is actually one that most of us are familiar with in terms of required minimum distribution. So if you or somebody you know is age 72 or older, their retirement accounts must distribute a certain portion of the funds each year. That distribution amount is based on life expectancy tables. So basically each year that table says, how old are you now? According to our table, you're going to live X number of more years, so 27 years. So divide the total by 27. That's how much you must take out. The next year, table does the same thing, says, how long are you going to live? Oh, 26 and a half. Divide the beginning total by 26 and a half. That's how much you must take out. Huge advantage with that is you won't run out of money. Highly unpredictable how much money will be distributed each year. But interestingly, almost everybody you know has a retirement account somewhere that at age 72 will be subject to this rule. So it's a pretty sensible rule to follow. And a lot of times it's easier to sort of wrap your head around than most of the other rules. And it is by design to allow the portfolio to grow in the beginning, peak, and then actually drop off, sort of a whale shape, if you will. And that's to be expected. That's by design. And it works pretty well. Another category I have people bring up from time to time is, I don't want to touch principal, just income. Now, that's a really simple way to do things, but it has some big downsides. The situations you might use this is if you have money that's specifically for endowment purposes or legacy purposes, you want somebody to inherit money, or perhaps if the money is in a trust. However, when you invest just for income, sometimes the investment choices might not be as positive as you want. They can have some bad side effects. So just something to consider. Very rarely does somebody have a portfolio large enough that they can simply live on the income. Usually a portfolio is that large, there's a lifestyle that's matched that portfolio for a number of years, and they wouldn't be satisfied coming off of that portfolio. So that's kind of the four things I wanted to talk about today. The 4% rule that probably everybody's heard of to some degree, how it works, the withdrawing a constant percentage from the portfolio. That's something that existed before the research on the 4% rule happened. Withdrawing an increasing portion of the portfolio, that kind of came into being when IRAs first were created. How do we make sure that withdrawals happen out of IRAs? Why are IRAs, why do they have required minimum withdrawals, you might ask? My sense is that the IRS and the Congress said the money has gone untaxed for this long. You now need to start taking money out and pay the taxes on it. The advantage to folks like you and I is if we've done it right, we had higher tax rates during our working years, and in our retirement years, those tax rates will be lower. So they've given us that advantage, but eventually they're knocking at the door saying that money needs to be taxed. And then the fourth one is to absolutely just live on the income that the portfolio is generating. Very unusual circumstance. A couple things I want you to keep in mind as you think about this, or perhaps you have questions, that all spending in retirement requires a withdrawal, but not all withdrawals have to be spent. You know, thinking back to the required minimum distributions, you might have a required minimum distribution of $100,000 this year, but only need $60,000 to live on. So it can be that way. But if you need to spend $100,000, you've got to take out $100,000 from those accounts. So spending and withdrawal rates are not necessarily the same thing. When you have different kinds of investment accounts, say you have retirement accounts and non-retirement accounts, the retirement accounts will have the required minimum distribution rules applied to them automatically. Tax code requires it. But your other accounts, you can choose whatever strategy you'd like. You might have ad hoc situations where you have a special trip coming up, it's time to buy a new car, or a charity needs your help in a timely manner. So you can manage the different accounts in different ways. There's no requirement that all of your investments need to be managed with the same strategy. You can have different strategies for different buckets of money. And the final thing is, in all of these, there's something called a crossover point, and that's when the rate of withdrawal exceeds the rate of expected total return. In other words, you're taking out more than it's likely, the account is likely to earn. And that, by definition, creates that decline I mentioned. And in retirement, if we know that that's coming and we're prepared for it and that we've planned for it, that's an okay thing. It's just important to understand what it is and make sure it's happening at a point in time that allows your portfolio to survive as long as you do. Why do we talk about all of this? What is the point of all these rules? It's my opinion that we want to make sure your money is supporting your goals and your values. If we make sure that the money is going to be there when you need it, then you can live a happier, more confident retirement. And that's what we're hoping for each and every one of you. As always, if you've got questions, post them in the post, or certainly give us a call here at Innovative Financial. Signing off today, this is Dee Dee Jones. Thank you for joining us.